feeling the pressure. I think we all do, right?
Definitely. It's pretty universal.
But what's really going on, in your body and mind when stress hits? And more importantly, how can you navigate it effectively?
Yeah, that's the key question.
You shared some really fascinating questions about the science of how we adapt to stress. And so we've taken a deep dive into a key resource.
Mm.
It's the chapter on stress adaptation from Psychiatric Mental Health Nursing, Concepts of Care and Evidence-Based Practice. The authors are Townsend and Morgan, 10th edition.
Right, and our goal here really is to pull out the essential understanding of stress adaptation.
Exactly.
What is it? What are the different ways to look at it? And crucially, how does it apply to your life?
Without getting totally lost in heavy academic language.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Because stress,
Yeah.
fundamentally, it isn't just some vague feeling. It's a real process.
I know.
It involves your body and your mind.
Okay, so let's start with the basics then.
Yeah.
The textbook gives us this foundational definition. Stress is the body's non-specific response to any demand. Simple enough, but
But the word stress, it often sounds negative, doesn't it?
it really does. But the authors point out something important, this distinction between eustress and distress.
Right. Eustress is that positive kind, the stuff that motivates you, gets you going.
Like a deadline that pushes you to finish a project.
Exactly. And then there's distress, that's the negative kind, the one that wears you down.
And here's what seems crucial. Whether a demand becomes positive or negative, well, it often depends on how we see it, right? Our perception.
That's absolutely right. Perception is huge. What one person sees as, I don't know, an exciting challenge, eustress someone else might feel, is just an overwhelming threat. Distress.
But the same event.
Yeah, the same external thing can land completely differently depending on your personal view. Your internal world is just, critical.
Maybe think for a second, about a recent time you felt under pressure.
Did it sort of energize you, help you perform, or did it just feel draining?
That difference often comes down to that initial appraisal, you could say.
Yeah, exactly. How you sized it up initially.
That makes a lot of sense. So, okay, our bodies react. And then there's this model from the General Adaptation Syndrome, or GAS.
Yes, JS, classic model.
He outlines 3 stages for how our bodies respond, especially to ongoing stress. The first is the alarm reaction. What's kicking off there?
The alarm reaction is basically your body's instant, whoa, something's happening.
Yeah.
Response. It's that classic fight or flight.
Got it.
So when you encounter something your body sees as a threat or even just a challenge, maybe a sudden loud noise or, bad news,
Right.
it instantly mobilizes. Hormones like adrenaline surge, heart rate jumps, breathing gets faster, senses sharpen up.
So it's like a short burst, designed for immediate action.
Precisely. Your internal alarm system just went off. It's geared for the immediate situation.
Okay, the body's ready for action. But then, if the stressor sticks around, we move into the stage of resistance. The alarm's quieted down a bit, maybe, but the stress is still there.
Yeah, in the stage of resistance, your body tries to adapt. It shifts into a longer-term coping mode.
Trying to get back to balance, homeostasis.
Exactly. It's trying to regain that internal balance while still dealing with the stressor. The really intense reactions might calm down a bit,
Okay.
but your body's still working overtime, really. It's using up energy to manage this ongoing demand.
It sounds sustainable for a while, but maybe not forever.
That's the thing. It's like keeping your car engine revving high for a really long time. It works, but wow, does it burn fuel. It's a very resource-intensive effort.
Which leads us, inevitably, I guess, to the stage of exhaustion if the stress just keeps going. This sounds not good.
No, this is where things can start to break down. The stage of exhaustion happens when your body's reserves, all that energy it was using, are just depleted.
Used up.
Totally used up from being under stress for too long. Those adaptive mechanisms that worked during resistance, they just can't be kept up anymore.
And the consequences.
Well, this is when you become much more vulnerable to illness. You might feel chronic fatigue. Other health issues can crop up. Your body's ability to fight off disease, basically, weakens because it just can't sustain that high level of effort.
Wow. So understanding those stages really highlights how that long-term chronic stress can seriously impact our health.
Absolutely. Gives you a framework for seeing that progression.
Okay, so GAS describes the internal body response, but stress isn't just internal, is it? The chapter also talks about stress as like an external event.
That's another important perspective, yeah.
How does looking at it that way add to the picture?
Well, this view really emphasizes that specific things happening in our lives and our environment can act as major stressors. They trigger our stress response.
Okay.
And they mention the recent Life Changes Questionnaire, the RLCQ, as a tool to kind of quantify this.
Ah, right. I've heard of things like that. It lists life events.
Exactly. Common life events, positive ones too, like getting married, but also negative ones like losing a job, moving house.
Things that require adjustment.
Precisely. And each event gets a score based on how much adjustment it typically needs. Getting married might have a higher score than, say, a small change in your work routine.
And the idea is, if you add up the scores for all the big changes you've had recently.
Yep. The more significant changes you accumulate in a certain period, the higher your RLCQ score.
And a higher score means more vulnerability.
Generally, yes. A high score suggests you've had to use a lot of energy adapting to all these external demands. That can wear down your overall resilience, making you more susceptible to stress-related illnesses.
That makes sense. It's like the cumulative effect.
Exactly. It's a tangible way to see how lots of different life events, even if each one alone doesn't feel that bad, can add up and impact your health.
Like having too many apps running on your phone, eventually the battery just drains faster.
That's a perfect analogy. Yeah.
But then, okay, the chapter shifts again. It looks at stress more as a personal transaction between us and our environment.
This brings the focus back inside, in a way.
What's the core idea there?
The core idea of the transactional view is that it's not just the event itself. What's really crucial is how you interpret it.
Ah, back to perception.
Back to perception, and also how you believe you can handle it. That shapes your stress response. And this involves two key processes: primary appraisal and secondary appraisal.
Okay, let's unpack those. Primary appraisal first. What's happening there?
So in primary appraisal, you're basically figuring out the personal significance of whatever's happening. You're asking, subconsciously maybe, does this matter to me?
Okay.
Is it potentially harmful, threatening? Is it stressful? Or maybe, is it actually positive? Or maybe it's just irrelevant.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you hear there are major traffic jams on a highway you never ever use.
Yeah.
Your primary appraisal is probably irrelevant, doesn't affect me.
Right.
But if you're already running late for a super important meeting and you hear about huge delays on your route,
Yeah.
well, that same type of event traffic is likely appraised as very stressful.
Because it directly impacts you and your goals. It's that immediate personal assessment.
Exactly. What does this mean for me?
Got it. So if you decide it is stressful in primary appraisal, then comes secondary appraisal.
That's right. Secondary appraisal kicks in. Now you're evaluating your coping resources and options.
Okay, so what am I asking myself here?
You're asking, what can I do about this? Do I have what it takes to handle it? Do I have the skills, the support system, the time, the energy, whatever resources I need?
Ah, so it's about your perceived ability to cope.
Precisely. If you feel like, okay, this is tough, but I have options, I have support, I can manage this, the stress response might be less intense.
Compared to feeling totally overwhelmed, like you have no way to deal with it.
Exactly. If you feel like you lack the resources, that feeling of stress can really escalate. This is such a crucial point for self-reflection. How do you typically assess your ability to cope when things get tough?
That's a really powerful question. So stress isn't just passively happening to us. Our interpretation, our sense of control or capability plays a massive role.
A massive role.
Yeah. Which brings us neatly to the idea of adaptation. What does it mean in this context to adapt successfully to stress?
Adaptation here really means your ability to respond effectively, to handle the stressors, meet the demands, but also maintain your equilibrium, that homeostasis we talked about.
So it's about navigating the challenges while protecting yourself.
Yes, exactly. Protecting your mental and physical well-being. It's finding that way to deal with difficulties without getting completely overwhelmed or suffering those negative health consequences we mentioned.
Okay, that's the goal. But what happens when our attempts to adapt, well, don't work? The chapter talks about maladaptive responses.
Right. When our usual ways of coping aren't enough, or maybe they're even counterproductive, we can end up with maladaptive responses.
Meaning ways of reacting that don't actually solve the problem.
Yeah, and sometimes they even create new problems. The chapter gives examples like anxiety disorders, where worry just becomes excessive, debilitating. Or depression, with that persistent low mood, loss of interest, and even psychosomatic illnesses, where the psychological stress actually shows up as physical symptoms.
Like chronic headaches or stomach issues linked to stress.
Could be, yeah. These things really illustrate the potential serious outcomes if stress isn't managed well over time.
This really brings us to some practical takeaways. They're framed as nursing implications in the book, but honestly, I think these are valuable for anyone.
Absolutely. Very applicable.
The first one is assessment. which for us means self-assessment, right? Self-awareness.
Exactly. For self-assessment, it's about really tuning in, paying close attention to your own physical signals, your emotional reactions when you're stressed.
Like, what does my body do?
Yeah. Do you get headaches,
Okay.
muscle tension, stomach problems, trouble sleeping? What about emotions? Do you get irritable, anxious, withdrawn?
And also thinking about those life events, like with the RLCQ idea.
Mm-hmm. Thinking about what big changes have happened recently and how they might be adding up, influencing your overall stress level. So yeah, step one is really know yourself. Yeah. Understand your own stress signature, so to speak.
Know yourself. I like that. Okay, step 2, the next implication is intervention, taking action. What kinds of strategies help here?
Intervention is all about actively learning and using effective coping strategies. It's not just knowing them, it's doing them.
Okay, like what?
Well, it could be things like incorporating relaxation techniques, maybe deep breathing, mindfulness, spending time in nature into your routine.
Things to calm the system down.
Exactly. Also, developing good problem-solving skills. That can make challenges feel less overwhelming, more manageable.
Gives you a sense of control.
It does. And seeking social support is huge. Leaning on trusted friends, family, maybe even support groups. That connection provides real emotional and practical help.
Don't try to go it alone.
Definitely not. And finally, working on resilience, that ability to bounce back from tough times, that's crucial for adapting long term. So step one is know yourself. Step two is know your tools and use them.
Know yourself, know your tools. Got it. These are really actionable. Okay, the last implication mentioned is evaluation. How do we know if what we're doing is actually working?
Evaluation is about checking in with yourself, monitoring things over time. Are your stress levels changing? Is your coping feeling more effective?
So noticing the results.
Yeah. Are those physical symptoms easing up? Are you feeling a bit more emotionally balanced? Are you handling challenges maybe with a little more ease than before?
It's like a feedback loop.
Exactly. It's ongoing self-awareness and being willing to maybe adjust your strategies if one thing isn't really clicking for you. So step 3.
Yeah.
Check if your tools are working.
Know yourself, know your tools, check if they're working. Simple but powerful.
Pretty much sums it up.
Okay, to kind of pull this all together, the chapter has this briefcase example. It's a 45-year-old who lost their job, feeling anxious, can't sleep.
Right. A common scenario, unfortunately.
Can you walk us through how that approach, assessment, intervention, evaluation would apply there?
Sure. So first, assessment. You'd want to understand how this person is perceiving the job loss. Is it the end of the world? Or maybe, deep down, a chance for a change?
Okay, understand their appraisal.
And what coping mechanisms are they using now? Are they isolating themselves? Drinking more? Or are they actively looking for support, trying to problem solve?
Get the lay of the land, then intervention.
Intervention would involve things tailored to their needs. Maybe providing resources where to look for jobs, information on financial aid, teaching specific relaxation techniques to help with the anxiety and the insomnia,
Practical help.
and encouraging connection. Maybe suggesting support groups for job seekers or just urging them to reach out to friends and family to combat that isolation.
Makes sense. And evaluation.
Evaluation would mean checking back in.
Mm-hmm.
Are their sleep patterns improving? Is the anxiety lessening? Are they making any progress, even small steps? In their job search, are they feeling a bit more hopeful? You monitor the outcomes.
So it really shows how those concepts, perception, coping, resources, apply in a real-life stressful situation.
Exactly. It grounds the theory.
So reflecting on all this, it seems like really understanding stress adaptation gives you a powerful framework for navigating life's challenges, doesn't it?
It really does. It moves stress from being this vague, scary thing to something you can actually understand and interact with.
We've covered quite a bit, the basic definitions, Sally's GS stages, looking at stress from the outside in and the inside out.
The external events versus the personal transaction.
Right. And the importance of adaptation and what happens when coping goes wrong, those maladaptive responses.
Yeah.
Hopefully this deep dive has given you, listening in, a clearer picture of what's happening physiologically and psychologically when you experience stress.
And maybe some key principles to think about as you navigate your own experiences. It's not about eliminating stress that's impossible, maybe even undesirable.
Yeah, remember eustress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's more about managing it effectively.
So thinking about all this, especially that interplay between how we perceive things and the resources we feel we have, maybe a final thought for you to consider.
Okay.
What's maybe one small, concrete step you could take this week? Just one thing to actively strengthen your own capacity for stress adaptation.